The Smith Wesson Model 686. Let's check it out. Smith & Wesson introduced their Model 686 in 1981, and it has become one of the most popular .357 Magnums of the Smith & Wesson line. It came out about the same time as the Ruger GP100. Their medium frame revolver in .357 Magnum. Of course, you could shoot 38 in it, but the quality and the smoothness of the 686 has made it very popular. In fact, today on the Smith & Wesson website, you can find a myriad of different configurations, from a 6-round cylinder even to a 7-round, ported barrels, all kind of competitive models. You name it, and the 686 probably has it. And then you have your Performance Center. But we're going to be taking a look at just your basic 4-inch model, which is one of my favorites. There's something about the 686 that I've always loved, and so when a good friend of mine told me he had one for sale, I was more than happy to buy it. These are solid revolvers. Smith & Wesson Model 686 .357 Magnum Revolver, 6-shot. They do make what they call the 686 Plus, which is a 7-shot. And there's a ton of different configurations on the Smith & Wesson website. I mean, all kind of barrel lengths, custom shop, competitive models. There's just a ton of options, and this is their most popular .357 Magnum revolver. One of the things that really led me though to this handgun in particular is that the shroud came all the way to the end of the barrel. You know, even on the Model 19 it's kind of shortened here, but this just gives you a lot of length and weight on the end of the barrel, which just makes it more shootable. Now before we get started, we're going to go ahead and check the chamber, and the gun is empty. All stainless steel model. If you want the blue, the 586 is the blued version. And there's not as many configurations in the blue. One of the things about double action revolvers is the price has really increased. I remember back in the early 90s, mid 80s, that these were running about $350. Since that time, it's tripled. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of the hand fitting and a lot of the parts. And you've got to get the timing right. And I mean, there's a lot of production that goes into these type pistols, and so the price is going to be more expensive, but the revolvers just keep hanging on. There's something about a double action or a single action revolver that is just satisfying. One of the big things about it is that it's very simple, and so let's go ahead and take this ammo out of the way. You know, the one big thing is it is safe with all the cylinders loaded. If you drop this on the hammer, there are safeties in here, you know, transfer bar type safeties that keep the hammer from coming down on that round. Then if you need to fire the handgun, here you can do it in double action, which is pulling the trigger, and that will drop the hammer. Or you can bring the hammer back in single action, gives you a much lighter trigger pull. And a lot of times, especially when people want to try to get really good accuracy, they go with the single action. But as far as training, you should always train to pull that trigger from double action, because typically if you're going to carry something like this for self-defense, and Lord help you because it's huge and it's heavy, but any revolver, is that you're typically going to fire that in a double action mode, just pulling the trigger and firing. But it makes it really simple. The one downside to a revolver is that, you know, it's slower to load. You have to pop the cylinder open, you load your rounds in, you close it. Yes, there are different type speed loaders out there, but you need to be proficient with those. Now, this is the Model 64. This was the last revolver used by the NYPD until 1991, I believe, and then they went to semi-automatics. It's a 38 special. And we're going to talk a little bit about 38 special compared to 357 Magnum. But one of the beautiful things about 357 Magnum is that you can fire 38 specials in here for a lot less recoil, less cost, and it just makes it pleasurable to shoot. But if you want that extra power, 357 Magnum is known for being a man stopper. And that goes with the FBI testing of all different type rounds. If you have weaker hand strength, this can be difficult to pull back. And so a lot of ladies tend to gravitate toward double action revolvers. And so just make sure that when you are looking at them that you get them to pull that trigger just to see if they're able to pull it back. Now, Smith & Wesson designates all their frames and sizes by letters. This is the L frame. It is the medium frame. With the Model 64, it's a K-frame. A little bit smaller, but still considered a medium frame. And then we have the J-frame, which this little Smith & Wesson Model 642, it is in 38 special. They do make some J-frames in 357 Magnum, but this is rated for plus P, which makes it really nice in 38 special. And then they have the N-frame, which is the large frame, more like your Model 29, which is a 44 Magnum. And then they make the X frame for some of their real 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum and some of those calibers. And then they make the Governor frame, which is really large. But this gives you that medium frame, and yet it has a lot of strength, a lot of stability. I mean, it is a full-on handgun. It's really weighty in the hand, but when you're firing full house 357 loads, that makes it really pleasant to shoot. We have a hoe grip on here. Originally, these came out with a Cabola grip that was wood that had a square butt. Those are still available, but this is the new hoe grip, and it has a round butt. So it gives you more, a better option for self-defense for concealed carry. And to me, I really like the round butt. I feel like I can really get my hand around it. With the square butt, it's just a little bit larger. It does give you a good solid grip on the handgun, but this Hogue grip really cushions a lot of the recoil. And again, with this shroud that goes all the way to the end, it definitely helps to weight it down at the front. Now, one thing about it is, of course, you just push your cylinder latch in, open it up, load your rounds. It's really simple to do. These are fluted to give a little bit of weight savings. Then our ejector rod is housed in this little area right here. And some of the early revolvers, the double action revolvers, had an exposed ejector rod, and that can get damaged. So it's really nice to have that nestled in there. Then we have our sights, which we have adjustable rear sights with a white outline. And then here at the front, we have an orange insert, and that just gives you a really nice sight picture, which, you have a decent sight radius. And then you go with your 6-inch, that gives you even more length. 6 inches are typically more for hunting, your 4 inches more for security and self-defense. But again, a lot of people really like revolvers because they are, again, so simple. You don't have to worry about racking the slide, you don't have to worry about putting the magazine in and out, and just the different manual of arms where with the revolver it makes it really simple. Now here we have the 38 Special and we have the 357 Magnum. There's not a lot of difference. In fact, it's about 1/8 of an inch in case length. The one reason why they extended the case was it doesn't build up as high a pressure like it would in that smaller space. But also it will not allow this to fit into a 38 Special cylinder. And that way you don't have to worry about, overpressuring the firearm. Now, of course, your 357 will fit really nicely into the cylinder, and so will your 38, and that way it just gives you a number of different choices. But when it comes to 38 Special, obviously the 38 will fit, but your 357 Magnum will not quite fit. This will not allow you to close the cylinder. And so that really is a big safety factor, because even though this revolver in itself could probably handle 357 Magnum, because it's designated as 38, it doesn't allow for 357 Magnum. 357 Magnum is rated up to 35,000 PSI, while the 38 Special is rated up to 17,000 PSI. So you almost have double pressure that the 357 Magnum is capable of. You have considerably more recoil, typically with your 357 Magnum. With the 38 Special, they're very pleasant to shoot. You can get plus P rounds, though, that make this an even better self-defense round. It does have some more recoil, but it doesn't quite match the 357 Magnum. And guys, you can get really tame 357 Magnums to shoot through your firearm. And one thing about these two calibers is there's a ton of different choices for bullet weight, bullet configurations. These are very common ammunition, so you should find this in almost any gun store. 38 Special was designed in 1898, while your 357 Magnum came around in 1934. And Elmer Keith was really one of the pioneers in the 357 Magnum, and for that matter, the 44 Magnum. A barrel shroud, I mean, it is solid. The stainless steel finish is satin, but it's very well done. Of course, it has a matte finish along the top with these serrations, and serrations right here to cut down glare on the adjustable sight, and it is blacked out. Now, one thing that I'm not a big fan of is what a lot of people call the Hillary hole. This is a lock that you can put to disable the firearm, and typically it comes with a key. There are some plugs that you can actually disable this lock, and I personally do not like it, but you know, it is what it is. And these were added later on in the production. There's plenty of them that don't have that. This is the model 686-6, and the -6 is where they started installing the Hillary hole. The action is very smooth. I mean, Smith & Wesson has always done a great job with their revolvers. It's just a very sleek handgun for what it is. Just very nice. Everything about it just speaks of quality. Bringing the hammer back, it's very smooth action. And again, you get that really short, light trigger pull on single action. And then on your double action, it's more of a heavier trigger pull. And really, that is your safety, because you can leave it in this configuration. When you want to pull that trigger, it gives you time to really mean to pull it if you're going to pull it. Some people will lighten the trigger action and they'll slick it up, but it needs to be a certain weight to be able to fire the cartridge. It's got to give it enough force to be able to come down on the cartridge, on the primer, and it's one of the things that sometimes when people get in here and start monkeying with it and they relieve too much pressure, it weakens the hammer. Now, as far as the trigger weight, double action, yeah, we've got it up there to about 11.5 pounds. Yeah, it's coming in at about 11 pounds. It's pretty stiff. When we get to single action, we're right there at about 5 pounds. So it's less than half of the trigger pull weight when you get to single action. Now the hoe grip, of course, it is marked Smith & Wesson, and with this one it has just a hex key to take off your screw. This one does have the leaf spring over the coil spring, and again, it does have that more rounded butt instead of the square butt, which comes out and just requires a larger, thicker grip at the end. And again, for me personally, I really like that round butt, and it just goes in really easily. But this is a fairly late model 686. Again, these have been around since '81, so there's a lot of different variations out there. Now, in 1985, Ruger introduced their GP100, and really very comparable to the Model 686. It replaced the Security 6. It has more of that beefed up end where the shroud comes down. Really more of a heavier, stronger firearm. And Ruger's really known for that. They're almost like overbuilt, but you know, when you're really shooting some Magnum loads, that's not a bad thing. This has the original wood grip. And to be honest, these two, when they first came out, they were very comparable. It just got to be a little bit more of the refinement of the Smith & Wesson versus just the raw strength of the Ruger. But this is a beautiful firearm, very slick. And then again, you know, this gives us, again, just so many choices. And the Ruger GP100 is still in production today. And weight on the Model 686. 40.3 ounces. It is a handful. It is heavy. I want to give a big thanks to Fiocchi for sponsoring our ammo. This is the 357 Magnum. We also have 38 Special. We also have some Federal Hydroshock and some Freedom Munitions self-defense loads. We're going to just test it out. But Fiocchi, man, it's good stuff. All made in the USA. One of the #1 suppliers of ammunition in the country. And loading this cylinder is just slow and easy. But it's got some power coming out. Now, when shooting the 686, what really differentiates it from other revolvers is this shroud at the end of the barrel. It's full length, it adds quite a bit of weight to the end, and it just helps to tame the recoil. .357 Magnum, really with hot loads, you can get a pretty decent amount of recoil. But most of it comes kind of back into your hand, which the Hogue grip takes care of that. I really like this grip. It really allowed for shooting to be very comfortable. And then again, with that front shroud, it just makes it a very balanced handgun. Now, one thing I did notice was when I was shooting double action at first, it was such a long trigger pull, and honestly, at 11 pounds, it's pretty high. By the time I got through the shot, I was anticipating it just a little bit until I got used to shooting it. Once I got through a couple of cylinders, I was able to get it back to where I typically shoot. But it's one thing to realize is when you're pulling that trigger back, being heavy in double action, it can affect your accuracy. Shooting the full house .357 Magnums, I mean, it has full power. You can see the flame coming out the end of the barrel. And it's definitely significantly more than when I switched to .38 Special. .38 Special is very mild, it's easy to shoot, and really a pleasure to shoot, especially with this large frame handgun. It really soaks up the recoil. And shooting one hand, even though it's a large revolver, it's easy to do. And just firing off those shots, you want to cant it just a touch. It just allows for it to recoil better. In a self-defense situation, that could be the way that you have to draw your firearm. But getting a two-handed grip on the revolver will give you better accuracy, better shot placement. So if you can do that, you should. When it comes to the sights, you have that black outline in the back. Of course, it is adjustable, and then you have that orange at the front. The insert really helps you to see the sight. And guys, honestly, shooting .357 Magnum for accuracy, I mean, it was very doable. But honestly, this gun's capable of just shooting one solid hole. And one of the things about a revolver, especially right here in this cylinder gap, if you put your hands too far up front next to this cylinder, you can get burned. And so you just need to be careful not to do that. And obviously, unless you've got really large hands, that's not typically a problem. But you just want to be careful because a lot of times we hold these really forward grips, and you want to make sure that you're not in this area right here. Now, because of that, there are certain places on a revolver that you need to be mindful of when cleaning. Right here at the forcing cone, a lot of times this gets really dirty, and if it's really been shot a lot, it can cause a little bit of a groove right here at the back strap. And then right here, of course, keep this area clean on your cylinder. And right here is definitely one of those areas that gets fouled pretty easily. And a little bit of lube right here helps. You want to look here at the back of the frame to make sure it's in good shape as well. And timing is one issue with revolvers, to make sure that it's not worn out and that everything is being lined up. One of the things about the 686, it's really tight right here. And so that gives you just a lot of strength. And you want to make sure that this is lined up again with your barrel, because it could be catastrophic otherwise. But typically with most of these modern revolvers, that's not a problem. Some of your older ones can have some issues. All right, the retail price on the Model 686 is $959. And of course, market price, according to where you go, is going to be less. Really, these retain their value even in the used market because they're just solid firearms. And one of the big things about revolvers is it just takes more to produce them. So that's one of the reasons why we've seen the price go from around $350 in the late 80s and now again getting up there around the $1,000 mark. But they'll last a lifetime, and that's one of the big things about these. And again, they are one of the most popular .357 Magnum revolvers that Smith Wesson produces. What are some pros and cons? First off, it has that .357 Magnum capability. It's been touted as the #1 man stopper. The ballistics, the bullet weights, and of course there's a ton of different choices. And then you've got that extra powder to make this really a Magnum load. But if you want to, you can jump down to your .38 Special, and it makes it really pleasant to shoot. And so you have a lot of ammo choices, and .38 Special and .357 Magnum are typically plentiful and easy to find. Your price on your .357 Magnum is going to be a little more expensive than your .38, but then again, you can get even plus P loads if you want to tame it down and still have an effective self-defense caliber. Double single action, it means that it's just very safe to carry, very safe to shoot. And that double action trigger pull, again, is really heavy. But if you want to just kind of pull the hammer back with a less trigger pull weight, you can do that as well. Very simple to load, Just drop your rounds in. Very simple to operate. It's one of the beautiful things about revolvers. And typically, there's not any malfunctions. And so you can really count on getting all of the shots off. The big issue is you only typically have 6 rounds. And so you're limited, whereas you have a semi-automatic, which they're getting up to 15 to 17 plus rounds. And you have your extra magazines, which makes it really easy to switch out. But there are options to be able to load quicker, and you can use your standard speed loaders, you can use your speed strips, load it in here and just fit around and just get comfortable where you can load this fairly quickly. And law enforcement for a long time, this was their staple. And for that matter, there's a ton of different holster options, and these are so well known and so durable, but if you need any kind of work done on them, I mean, these are still in current production, and they have a lifetime service warranty on Smith & Wesson firearms. Plus, there's just something about 357 Magnum. It's just awesome. So as the great Obi-Wan stated, it's an elegant weapon for a more civilized age. But the 357 Magnum or any of the double action revolvers are still very popular for self-defense. And there's just something about these that just takes it back a notch. Slow to load, slow to fire, but man, it is very satisfying. When it comes to a good 357 revolver, the 686 makes an excellent choice. Whether you go with the shorter barrels or you go out with the 6-inch or even longer up to 8-inch barrel lengths. This gives you a great hunting companion, but it also gives you that 357 Magnum right there on your hip. And then if you want to go with the 38 Specials, just to have a lighter load, you have those choices. Let's face it, guys, this gun's been around for over 40 years, and there's good reason. Over the years, these have really risen in price. So if you find a good 357 Magnum revolver, especially the 686, it's highly recommended you pick it up, because everybody needs a good double action revolver in their collection. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. But we really appreciate Fiocchi for sponsoring the. We really appreciate. They supply the U.S. military. They are the official supplier of cleaning. They'll take their wife out. It's hard to beat a good Smith. I mean, they're just good quality. The price. When it comes to a good revolver, when it comes to just the Smith & Wesson Model 686, let's check it out. A 2-inch and a 3-inch, and to be honest, okay, no, they make it 2.5 inch. These are solid. These are solid. So finding a good old Smith & Wesson revolver is just, okay. Oh, that's about to wear me out. This thing may be a medium frame, but man, it is weighty, wearing me out.